The Pale Blue Eye is Netflix's latest movie release, and it's safe to say that it was a mystery with a very satisfying twist. Set in 19th century New York, we followed Mr. Landor as he was hired to investigate a gruesome set of murders that took place within a military academy. However, as the movie went on, and more specifically drew to a close, we saw that all was most certainly not what it seemed. So with that, I thought I'd recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from this movie. So let's get into it. Here is the Pale Blue Eye ending explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. As we embarked on the final part of the movie, we saw that Poe had grown closer and closer to Leah, who was Dr. Marquise's daughter, and took an interest in her romantically. This was also whilst helping Landor with the case that needed to be solved. Leroy Fry was the person who had been killed and was at the centre of the case that Landor was investigating, but since then there had been the death of some animals where their hearts had been carved out, resembling Leroy Fry's death, and also another private named Ballinger who was killed in a similar fashion. From here we heard that the carvings of the animals were done in a completely different way to what was done on Leroy Fry, which at that moment should have shown us that they weren't connected. With Landor getting closer and closer to solving who the culprit was for the Colonel, and there being a sinister nature to what we saw unfolding, we saw Landor go back to Pepe, where he spoke of a book called Discours du Diable, which was created by Henry Leclerc. He was a priest who was burned at the stake and turned out to be an ancestor of Leah and Artemis. This book voiced the satanic rituals which instructed the carving out of the human heart, along with an animal's heart, something which was apparent throughout all of the murders in the area. We saw that Leah had put something in Poe's drink, causing him to go unconscious, which meant that herself, Artemis, and their mother were on the verge of carrying out the ritual on him. This was only until we saw Landor storm in and he got them to stop. Leah knocked over a candle due to the commotion, and it ultimately led to the barn starting to burn down. During this, Landor managed to save Poe, and he also pulled their mother away. However, a dropping beam from the barn caused the pair to be crushed in the blaze. This pointed the finger at the family for being involved in the murders, along with the evidence of the connection to the cult. It provided an answer to the Colonel, the Captain, and the President, and it also meant that the Doctor handed in his resignation. The family carried out these rituals because they believed that it stopped Leah's seizures from occurring because she was ill. She believed that she could talk to the dead and it would keep her alive due to the literature that was in the book. However, with the case now being closed and the siblings being the ones to blame for the murders, we then saw the movie cut to a short period of time later where Poe visited Landor in his home, and this was then when the conclusion was twisted on its head and a new ending was created. The letter that was found inside of Leroy's hand at the beginning of the movie was something that was left with Poe, and after he cross-checked it with the letter that Landor left for him, he saw that the handwriting had the same inflections and looked the same. This meant that Landor was the person that summoned Fry to that location on the night in question, but the answer was why. Well, it all stemmed back to Landor's daughter, Mattie, somebody who it was clear to see had impacted Landor's present day due to past actions. We were led to believe that she'd run away. However, that wasn't the case. We saw a flashback of Mattie being assaulted by 3 members from the academy on her way home from a ball. One was Leroy Fry, one was Ballinger, and the other was Stoddard. Landor found this out by the necklace that had Leroy Fry's initials on, and also by deciphering the shorthand and code that was inside of Fry's diary where the names were revealed and the events of what occurred on the night in question were documented. Not being able to get over the horrific night, we saw her start to deteriorate and she ended up taking herself by stepping off at a great height. Landor was the person who was behind the killing of Fry, and the first clip that we saw in the entirety of the movie was the morning after he killed Fry during the night. He was washing away his involvement and the evidence of the crime scene, and we saw this be confirmed in the flashback at the end of the movie. Landor got lucky when he stumbled across the revelation of the Discours du Diable and the connection that it had with the Marquise family. He was able to forge some kind of cover, hence why he then went on to butcher the animals and make it seem like the work of a cult member, further supporting the idea that it was the family. But the shabby carving didn't prove to be detrimental. This was all done as an act of revenge, and as Landor said, he could have gone to the authorities and secured a confession, but instead he actually wanted them to no longer live. He killed Leroy Fry, then he killed Ballinger, but before he could get to Stoddard, he ran away. However, Landor was content with the very idea that Stoddard would forever be looking over his shoulder, worrying and wondering if he was ever going to meet his maker. It was a twist that I didn't expect, but I thought it was intelligent and I did very much enjoy it. I felt like there was definitely more to come due to the fact that there was around 30 minutes of runtime left once we saw the Marquis family being caught. With Poe stating that he could go to the authorities after working out what actually happened, Landor gave him a note with his confession on, and it was here where we then saw Poe showing a sense of care for Landor, recognizing the appreciation for the time that they spent with each other, and I believe understanding the reasoning why he did what he did. Poe went on to burn it on the candle in Landor's home, showing that he wasn't going to go to the authorities. The final shot that we had of the movie was Landor walking off into the woods, and he approached the cliff where his daughter died. He walked to the edge of it holding her ribbon and stated, "Rest, my love," as the ribbon then blew with the wind. It was then left up to us to decide if Landor stepped off or if he stepped forward and carried on with the rest of his life. I personally feel as though Landor stepped forward and continued with his life. This was his way of him speaking with her, letting her know that he'd seek revenge for what happened to her, and he was finally able to not allow it to consume his life like it had previously been doing, providing a somewhat satisfying resolution. I thought this movie was pretty good. It was a relatively small cast, and I thought they all did a good job at delivering the roles that they needed to. With Christian Bale leading the cast, it was always a given that he'd do a great job, but the real surprise for me was Harry Melling. He played Edgar Allan Poe extremely well. His delivery of the dialogue, visual performance, and relationship with the fellow characters felt so convincing, and I bought into the character that he was offering. Watching his development and the intuition that he had was just as fun as trying to solve the mystery ourselves. It was quite an emotional end to the movie, watching two friends at the end parting ways, especially with Poe losing somebody that he loved, but protecting somebody who had allowed him to grow as a person to walk free. One critique I'd have is how dark a lot of the movie was in terms of visual shots. Whenever there would be scenes during the night, I felt as though I couldn't really see a thing, and was almost guessing what was happening by the shadows that were moving. I don't know whether it was a stylistic choice, but it didn't really feel like it. The twist at the end was something that I didn't expect, but I did enjoy it when it did arrive. I enjoy movies that are set in a past that isn't really visually documented, so I instantly felt transported to the early 1800s when this movie started, and the world that was presented to us felt very real. So, there you have it, the Pale Blue Eye ending explained. If you want to see more videos such as endings explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @BrainPilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of this movie? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.